give a background to this changing role that we're going to talk about, I thought the best way is to really kind of, recognize why we need to change. Because, I don't think any of us are willing to change if there's no motivation or a need or a pressure or a reason, right? So let's look at some of the reasons why we need to change. I extracted this in one of the common literature. If you look at the time it took for any of these implementations or innovations to grab 50 million users, you see radio took 38 years in the world, TV took 13 years, and going further, the Google Plus, probably now Google Plus days are also over, only took 88 days. There might be more recent examples where you might tell us that certain innovations or certain products would have taken only days, few days to reach 50 million users, right? So that's the speed that some of the innovations and the products that we are taking to the market is taking to grab attention of users. So what does this mean, right? So the days that we said we have enough time to take a product to the market, test it, and then take the user's feedback, and then improve, change, and test and redeploy in the market. That time is becoming very shorter, right? And then pretty much practically there's no sometimes the required time. So number one, innovation, that is the kind of thinking new, and then the efficiency, how fast and how quickly we kind of understand the user's movement, and then agility, right? How quickly we really kind of readjust ourselves. These are the three requirements for survival. That's what the businesses are telling us today, right? So some of the things that are getting changed over years. So I wouldn't call it yesterday, but in the recent past, we used to do development on waterfall method, and then in terms of from the requirement to the time that we would basically tell somebody or a user or somebody who's looking for our products, we had weeks of time. Then we had static resources. For example, say storage to various different things. We used to basically have our own servers, our own storage, etc., etc. And when you are doing either requirements or design or any of the activities that you used to do, we said there's a certain limit in terms of the number of changes we could take, right? I can remember I used to go in front of development teams or even users as the QA lead or QA manager and says, guys, this release is fixed. You can't put any change, right? If you have any changes, please put down in the change log. We'll probably try to accommodate in the next release, right? Next release might be 3 months away or 6 months away, right? Now, those are the ones we used to say, right? And the typical products that we used to develop, either enterprise grade even, right? The number of users that we used to test the load or the performance is so, like I can remember 5,000 users, 10,000 users, right? Very rarely, hardly, we had 100,000 or over, right? Now, what is happening today? So everybody is talking about Agile, right? And I don't think, if you talk about any iterations today, right, people will even start, listening to us. And then, continuous deployment, dynamic resourcing, right? Not only the regular environment, development environment we're working on, even if you go and go to the users, and really kind of talk about on-premise deployment versus cloud, and even simple matters. One of the eye-openers to me recently, I used to store music in my iPhone and have the laptop, so sync up, etc., etc. And then a couple of weeks back, I asked my son, "Can you sing some music?" Right? He said, "There's this music cloud." Right? Why do you really kind of waste your time downloading music to your laptop, whatever, right? So this gives actually the direction that the world is going. And I don't think right now we are very interested in carrying these large what you call the storage hard disk we had, right? And everything has been replaced by some of this cloud storage, etc., etc., right? And then if you look at a lot of the developments that we do, it could be a POC, or it could be even the MVP, minimum viable product, that we would do. From the very beginning, we need to think about millions of users if there is a need, because the products are not designed and developed for small groups. And from the very beginning of products, scalability, the large number of users, these are some of the key things that any product owner or any user would come up with if they are to work with us. So this is just to kind of show how we were running this show, right? I can remember some of these diagrams in some of the training sessions I've conducted to some of the new joinees, and even during the training sessions we did. So we said we have a requirements gathering phase, we said we have a design phase, we had a development phase, right? And then for each phase we had certain quality control, quality assurance activities that we had marked. We said we are going to review requirements, we are going to review design, right? So some of these things, if you really look at, very quickly, these have become irrelevant, right? If we today go and tell a project team that you guys need to wait to start your design, and you can't start the design before we complete the requirement review, they're going to laugh at us, right? Same way, any activity that we would really kind of do in a project, in a single iteration or a single sprint, if you had to really kind of put gates to each of these activities and ask people, wait till we really complete our quality control activity or testing activity, people are going to laugh, right? No, that's a reality. So this whole so-called testing life cycle that we used to run, writing a large test plan, writing a large amount of test cases, and then start testing, probably do a kind of long haul of test automation scripts, right? All are going to now have started challenging, and we see this whole traditional quality control life cycle is becoming irrelevant more and more today. While we are looking at what we are going through, I would like to also get your attention to 6 key points that I extracted from the quality report that is usually published every year by Sogeti. These are the 6 key points that they said, which is basically important for 2018. This is based on the 2017 data that they usually take about 1,000 companies in different regions of the world, and they do like a very systematic study. This systematic study brought in these 6 points for 2018, right? So number 1, what they're saying is, if you're really focusing on testing, right, one of the first area that they're looking at is everybody's talking about digital transformation. Right? Even the company I'm coming from, Auxenta, we changed our tagline from enabling technology transformation to digital transformation, right? Because if you really look at now, the IT is not about high-end enterprise grade stuff, right? You start, you switch on your car, you have IT or you have programming, you have the entire infrastructure that we used to see in some of the high-end places, to the DVD player, to even kind of go in front of a restroom, everywhere we walk in, use. Now we have seen the usage of IT inside these places, right? So this whole IoT, mobility, mobile technology, and the third-party relationships, right? Now applications are seamlessly integrated through some of these platforms, and these open concepts are challenging the testing and testing complexity, right? And this is one of the top factors that the World Quality Report is recognizing as challenges that will help or will lead the testing to change. Then the second one, obviously, we discussed this whole Agile and DevOps movement, right? This is very interesting. When I started in the industry in 1999, right? So that was a time that there was this whole concept of the same team does the development, and then same team moves in to testing after completing the development, right? And then complete the deployment, goes back, start once again from the requirements up to the end, right? So the whole the need for change was that the same guys who are doing the requirements development are probably not the best people to do testing, and also this is a very time-consuming activity because you are not actually optimizing any skill, right? So the time that I came into the industry, the whole view is that let's go for specialization. So we were recognizing there has to be some people who should be good on requirements gathering. So we looked at a set of people to be business analysts. And then guys who are good in design and writing code, we said, okay, you guys are the developers, right? And then the ones who are more business savvy and who can understand the customers, we call them the QA engineers, and so and so. And then created these different groups and gave them specialization, right? And then we used to run parallel. So when some guys are writing their requirements, there's the whole kind of the set of requirements come into the development, and then that then goes to QA. So this runs on a more well-oiled engine without any delay. And the same guys who sit on the requirements, now they don't have to really kind of wait till their requirements are completed to go and start writing the code, and same goes on, right? But now what is happening is right now, the direction that the industry went, where this whole specializations were created, then the whole parallel activities were created. Now, after about, 20 years or maybe 15 years, we are coming back and saying, guys, wait, there seems to be a problem, right? All these different kind of tracks that we have created looks like while we are gaining efficiencies or economies of scale, on the other side, we are going to miss certain agility and also our nimbleness and the ability for us to really kind of, adopt certain changes very fast into the system, right? So probably we are going back, not entirely back, to a great extent and saying, I think while we are specializing, there has to be a lot of common skills should be in a team, right? So we are now saying DevOps, right? So the same team comes in as developers, and then there's a transformation to the QA, and there's a bunch of people who are actually doing both together. So that's what the World Quality Report is saying. More and more, this particular movement where the DevOps and Agile practices will be used together. So this whole dedicated set of QA guys, their need will be a lot more limited in certain enterprise grade business savvy applications, there'll be a role for dedicated QA testers, but otherwise some of these small, very quickly going to market applications, they might not need even dedicated QA, right? So that's what the guys are saying. Test automation. So test automation have come a very long way, right? This has come from a time where we went and recorded some of the scripts from a UI recorder and used to play back, and then there's a lot of errors we used to manually correct, to a time where now the automation scripts have become far more smarter, far more intelligent, and cognitive. Right? So the need for more smarter test automation will become a very strong need, and anybody who is actually going to survive in QA might need to really kind of look at this area as a very important area for us to change. Industrialization. Once again, going back to the time. So we had these small QA teams who are dedicated for different projects, and each QA team had their project manager, development team, and then a testing team. Then there was this whole notion saying, why do we really keep a dedicated QA team for each project? Rather, why don't we club them together as a center of excellence? And then their time can be very efficiently used across different projects if you create a COE. So on this spirit, we went and really created departments of QA, and then multiple projects used to dump their code into this common group, and then the testing activities were done, right? And then after some time, people realized, guys, there's a middle ground. Because for certain applications, the functional specialty or the domain specialty is a key. So if you basically put a set of generalized testers who only looks at the requirements and the features, we are going to miss a big opportunity, advantage, right? So this testing center of excellence became more, there is a set of specialized teams. Actually, once again, it went back halfway through and then said, okay, guys who are doing the manual testing and the ones who are needing more domain and the application specialization, they stay with the project team. The ones who are not needing the application and the domain specialization and needing more test automation, performance testing, more technical specialty and the focus, they stay common. So I guess it went back halfway through and got adjusted. Now what they're saying is that this also need to be rethought, right? If we are really kind of keeping a testing team fully integrated with a project team, with a small development and testing team, how can we change these COE concepts also to fit into that environment, right? So these QA managers who are sitting with say hundreds of QA team members and who are really kind of managing their day-to-day tasks, right, might lose the jobs, because anymore we don't need these super duper QA managers, right? So rather now the role of the QA managers or the QA directors will be moved into more small teams, and the ones who are specialized on the process tools and all might be part of those small teams, not sitting in managing teams, right? So these are some of the things, if you really kind of read the quality report, what they're highlighting on. And test data, right? And it has very correctly mentioned, it's actually continued to be the Achilles heel, right? And I had to also look for the meaning of this term. Sorry, if you didn't get it, you're part of the same group, right? So it's actually what it says is the weakest link, right? So how does it become the weakest link? If you look at a lot of the testing activities we do, our least focus every time is to get quality test data. And I can't disagree on this fact. Throughout my career, I think we looked at, or we sometimes even overwork on getting right requirements for testing teams. We put a very high focus on getting the right test automation tools, getting the right, the skilled, etc., etc. But the amount of effort that usually any team would be putting in getting the right test data usually is always underestimated, right? So that's what they are highlighting once again. Test environment and test data will continue to be this weakest link in testing. So if we are looking at a changing role for QA or testing, we need to really look at creative ways of getting right test data for us to do testing. And then finally, QA and testing budgets. So what happens is, if you look at the ones who are allocating budgets in this whole Agile and the DevOps dream, the decision makers will always try to live in the future on their budgets, but try to deal with the present, right? So what will happen is that the QA and the testing budgets will be further cut. And that way, decision makers will try to force DevOps and Agile into the environment, and the lack of budgets for QA and testing, it will be a very challenging thing, because any transformation, if you look at the gurus who preach on the change, right? The first factor for a change is having catastrophe or having urgency or a disaster, right? So a lot of the decision makers will think creating a disaster at this point for QA teams will force them to change, right? So budgets will be cut, salary increments will be cut, the budgets for tools and the processes will be cut, so that the decision makers will think, okay, if I don't give the right amount of budget for those guys who are running QA, so they will try to change, or there's an urgency for them to change from their traditional ways of doing testing to some of these DevOps and the Agile methodologies, right? Very unfortunate, but that's what the quality report has recognized. A lot of the people who are owning the budgets, when the questions were asked, the budget owners have said this year they're allocating less money for QA and less money for testing, right? So these are the 6 different items that World Culture Report is highlighting. So this is to really discuss. There are a few things we have been trying and genuinely trying to deal with, right? So I'll go one by one. So compared to some of these cubicle-based separate work environments, we have now, I've seen many places I work with have brought in these open tables, no cubicles. Everybody's work of environment, and there's opportunity for us to collaborate, right? And now there are no anymore QA teams on one table and the development team was on one table. Everybody sitting same table, right? So we have actually done, compared to 5 years back or 10 years back, many things to enable Agile, right? But however, I'm sure you have your own measurements to say whether has this been successful or not. right? So let's talk about it as we start doing the Q&A. But one thing I wanted to highlight here, and I think we would have taken this example in previous sessions as well. So this speed and the agility, they have conflicting goals. If somebody wants to get something done very fast, and at the same time, if somebody say, I want to be agile, you are trying to say at the same time, I need two things that are not probably going to happen together, right? The example is that if you take your vehicle and get into Gold Road from Cinnamon Grand, probably this time, now it's not even peak traffic, right? What's the speed usually you can go with? The reports say average speed in Colombo is 28 kilometers an hour. And peak hours, it drops about 18 kilometers an hour, right? So say 28 kilometers an hour, right? You take the same vehicle to one of the highways, outer circular or to down south highway. What's the average speed you can go? Speed limit is 100. Usually you can go at 100, if not maybe 80, 90. If you take your vehicle, you might not be able to take your vehicle, but if you take a vehicle to the Formula 1 track and go, if your engine capacity supports, what's the average speed you can go? The maximum speed that your engine supports. What's the difference? Gold Road, down south highway, and the Formula 1 track. It's a discipline. Discipline on the road, right? If the Gold Road had the same discipline that the down south highway is having, you could exceed 100, right? And if that down south highway had the discipline and the conditions that the Formula 1 track has, then you could probably, and no cops by the way, then we can try the maximum speed of the engine, right? The difference, if you take the same principle down to software development, if you keep changing your requirements and try to be agile, and if you keep changing your design, so the design, the other code components, etc., very frequently, right? The speed that you get your delivery out, the speed will drop, right? Now, at the same time, if the business is always expecting the deliveries in the same speed or a better speed and ask you to adopt agile, those are two different conflicting goals, right? We have to either say the businesses, guys, either you decide whether you want to adopt the business, the changes happening in the business to IT, but go on a speed that it can go, or you forget about the changes in the business, give us set of firm requirements, we'll try to give you the releases fast, but we can't be agile to the level that you're expecting, right? So these are some of the very important discussions that are happening in this environment. So the other thing we have been trying is that, so I can remember the time that we used to run some of these large teams. We were celebrating for some of the customers 100 members in single team, 150 members in single team. I can remember I think BMICH, one of the rooms, we celebrated 250 in a one project team, right? 2005, 2007, we were celebrating 250 team members in a one single development team, one customer, one application, right? Now, what is happening, right? If you really look at that whole large teams, large set of requirements and long timelines have gone, right? So if you really look at, we are pretty much not different to any other field. This picture is from US Navy SEALs, and they are the ones who tried this first in Iraqi war. Created a 4-member group and then given a very small 1 or 2 day target to achieve, and then you keep building up your final target based on each 4-member team, the achievement. So if they can't go forward, you withdraw. If they can go forward, you plan the next day, etc., etc. But having the long target in the mind, right? And then the same strategy was adapted between 2006 to 2009 when this humanitarian war was done. And I think that's one of the reasons that was also successful, right? So similar to that, if you take any other industry, this is a very clear strategy that a lot of the industries have tried and been successful. So this is one thing we can think about, large and creating a 250-member large team, right? Break the entire application into small pieces, right? And there would be somebody who will look at it from the top and understand how the pieces will be integrated. But we might not be able to do 4-member, maybe like less than 10 members, right? 5 members, 6 members, 7 members. And then each team has somebody who plays the business requirement or a business analyst role, couple of developers, and maybe 1 or 2 QA. And then they take care of the need for that particular team. And there might be few people who are looking at the overarching development strategy, the QA strategy, the requirement strategy. But the final authority and the responsibility of achieving the goal lies with this small team, right? And then the success of the large team depends on each of these small teams' success, and they are given the full freedom. Now, some of the practices that we used to do with CMMI, generalizing all these templates that they were using to generalizing the practices they used to do, I think now all are getting challenged, right? Now these Navy SEALs teams that are deployed, or even some of the other industries, they are given the minimum frameworks. They are free to use their own techniques depending on the situation. And what the overarching the standard and the governance that are given to these teams are the minimum barriers. And they are given the full freedom to use the tools that they want, the processes that they think is right to use, and given the freedom to achieve the goals. So this is another important thing. So software testers to become more technical, right? I guess even if you start from the hiring, if you go to some of these engineering, science, and some of the IT courses, right? The ones who are technical, they want to do development, right? And the ones who are not so technical, right, or don't want to be technical, they usually go and vote for being in QA, right? And that's how the whole story starts, right? And then we start recruiting these, right? And the ones who are not want to be technical come into the QA track, right? And then get the process training and some of the methodology training, and then they get deployed into teams, right? And then after all, now the industry is saying, guys, you want to be technical. And how do you? Right? So this will be a challenge. But unfortunately, we can't run QA like this, right? So if QA is the place for the graduates who doesn't want to be technical, then we need to really ask them why do you want to do IT in then? If you don't want to write a code, or if you don't want to really understand the logics and kind of get into somebody else's code, then first of all, why do you want to do IT? And there are other industries, right? They can move in there. So this whole notion of QA is a place for those who don't want to be technical has to go out, right? And then from the recruitment itself, the tone of the senior people who go into these recruitment camps has to be, guys, then let's not even recruit them. If there's a pressure to grow the companies, if there's a pressure to recruit and really kind of staff, we will be better off not taking such people, right? Compared to take them and then can't face this change right in front of us, right? So that's a very important thing we should really kind of try to think. On the other side, right, while we are saying our QA guys need to be technical, on the other side, it's a connecting role, right? On one side, the QA guys need to understand the code logic and also be technical enough to write a test automation code. On the other side, it might be the same guys, it might be a combination who will go and really kind of understand the customer, the users, the business, and why this application is for, right? So essentially what we're saying is that the QA role will be much more complex and needing much more rigor compared to development role. And it takes more effort for somebody to be a successful QA person compared to becoming a developer, right? That is another challenge. Now, if you really look at, I worked with one of our customers recently. So their question is, in terms of the application roadmap, are we looking at right changes to the application? And is this the right way of planning the application lifecycle, right? So there are many things. Number one, for application lifecycle or application roadmap, there is a very clear input from the business, because business has to drive the application saying this is what the strategic need of the application, either for internal purpose or for the customer facing. On the other side, the other factor like SWOT analysis for a company or a person, for application also, we need to take how that application has been performing so far from a functionality and the other aspects, and see how much this application can scale to what the business is expecting. Now, for example, say, so one of the simple exercises we did was, the application was about 5 years old, right? So throughout this 5-year life cycle, they had accumulated, the QA teams had found about 14,000 defects. This total database had about 14,000 defects. And out of these 14,000 defects, about 3,000 defects were outstanding. Either they are not the critical defects or they are not in the critical path, either way. And then we looked at the the ones that are even fixed and selected 10 defects and did a RCA, root cause analysis, and try to understand in the delivery process where these 10 defects were injected, right? So that was a very eye-opener, right? And in fact, the appreciation for the QA team got much bigger as we kind of went through that process and pinpointed, saying, guys, certain practices in certain stages of the life cycle development had really kind of caused these defects being leaked into the application, right? So I just took example, right? So what we're essentially saying is that if the QA team start looking at their responsibility as, I have the responsibility to release a quality application, rather as of my role is to try all these known combinations and tell this is where the application is failing, right? There's a much bigger role to play, right? So those are the I also tried taking few case studies from Google, IBM, Microsoft, and Facebook, and tried understanding whether is this something that is actually happening to us, or is this something that all of us are going through, right? It's like everybody is on this problem, right? So now, for example, say, I exactly can't remember from which company some of these statements are, right? Number one, actually this first one is from Google. So they have the company-wide quality guidelines, not processes, a part of the culture, right? But at Google, nobody's asked saying, this is the compulsory template that you guys need to use. This is a compulsory process that you need to follow. They are given the freedom, right? And then they always appreciate people who prioritize quality over features. For example, say if there's a Scrum Master who has refused to take certain features and say, guys, my code is not stable and I want an extra sprint to stabilize my code. Such team members or such teams are appreciated more compared to the ones who probably kind of try to absorb kind of as much as features into a sprint and say, I'm a super duper guy, right? I can deliver 10 features, right? Rather than, they appreciate saying, these guys released 5 features, but 5 quality features, right? Then this developer-centered culture, and they usually always create teams around developers, and then high test coverage, test always first, some of these things. So this other very bold statement saying quality is not equal to test, right? So no matter how much somebody is testing, quality cannot be increased, right? Quality has to be increased from the point of developers. And a lot of these companies always try to put more emphasis, even from a QA team perspective, to support developers to show where they have failed. And then do like a RCA, take the learnings. So this is about this quality over features. And this is another I think we have a few minutes to go. This is tried at Microsoft as well. So they have software engineers, they have test engineers, and then they have software engineers in test. And I found few companies in Sri Lanka also piloting this, right? So they have this a group of people who are in between, right? But actually the quality software engineers in test are the best software engineers who they have taken out from the software engineer pool and put in to do the code reviews and the unit testing for the code that so the test engineers usually play the traditional role of being product experts, quality advisors, analyze risks, do the test automation and automated and manual tests, while these software engineers in test are actually doing a lot of these underestimated code reviews, unit testing, and unit test frameworks. And last, this whole DevOps concept as well. This is from IBM. So they are working on this whole transitional life cycle where the development get completed as the testing get started, and then the operations take over, and there's a common team who does development, testing, and operations both, while there are some people who are specializing on each. This is what that diagram is about. So this the gray color or the brown color DevOps team in the middle, they are actually assembled from the ones who can actually do very good coding, very good testing, and ones who are very good on their either cloud deployments or the some of the infrastructure related ones as well. So if you can think about a profile where a guy who can write good Java or .NET code, who is also been in testing and done good testing, and plus also who understand Linux, or if there's AWS or Azure, who understand Azure, who would understand AWS, can do deployments. So that's actually this middle core, and they're paid very high as well. Yeah, I think my take on is that as I said, we are trying to come to a middle point, right? Because if you look at the disadvantage of writing a test strategy for a 1 year long project, right? And during this year, a lot of things can change, right? What we are saying is that, no, let's not go there. Write a 20-page test strategy document and sign off from the customer and keep it as a Bible, right? Maybe rewrite a couple of page, very broad level guidelines saying that's our test strategy, and don't spend weeks to do it, right? Get together, you have your project manager or the scrum master, you have your couple of development team members, even you can get maybe like a educated user also into that one, right? Very broad level guidelines and say keep it as your test strategy. But as you go into the individual sprints, right, you may detail out some of those guidelines into next level details, right? So what we're saying is that we have to have planning, right? And I'll also bring in another aspect, and which is very interestingly, if you take the CMMI journey from level 1 to level 5, right? So we are saying level 1 is you're defining your processes, you're institutionalizing, and then level 3 is where you really have the most stubborn processes in a company. And then 4 onwards, once again, you're relaxing, right? So it's a maturity cycle, right? So for us to do Agile, first of all, everybody has to go through such a cycle where everybody need to understand the importance of processes and some of this documentation, right? So what happens is right now, without going through that, now for example, say this is like you're trying to certify at CMMI level 5 without going through 1, 2, 3, right? It's a balance. It's a balance.
Yeah, so I have seen in companies that, couple of years back, there used to be in a team, dev to QA ratio used to be like 1-to-1 or close to that. But now with the Agile, as you mentioned, there are around 6 devs in a team with 1 QA guy.
Sure.
Is it Agile or is it just cost cutting, or what's your take on it?
So that 6 factor, right, in the quality report. Let me put it this way. Couple of things, right? So we said testing is not quality, right? So we can in fact actually even go lesser number of QA people, but the proactive steps has to be taken in order to reduce the number of QAs. Now, for example, say if you're not hiring quality team members for development, and if you're not providing quality trainings, and if you're not really running code reviews, unit testing, and all these things that will really help us to get a code right time first, and reducing the QA team, you're suiciding, right? First of all, we need to do all those things before we take the QA team members out, right? And the other thing is, though we are saying there's only one dedicated QA member for a 6-member development team, some of the QA tasks would have been now spreaded, allocated to some of the developers as well. So it has to be context driven, right? But however, if you really look at, I will bring in some lean manufacturing concepts, right? Now if you take other industries like automotive industry or even the apparel industry, right? Anything that doesn't add value, direct value to the end product, we call it a waste, right? So now, for example, in the automotive industry, right, when a car is assembled, any operation that is not contributing the assembly is considered to be a waste, right? After 52 years fine tuning in Toyota, they still think there's 30% of waste in the processes, right? Now, I used to work as a lean implementer in apparel for about 3 years, right? Other than sewing a garment, anything that we do in that type of factory is called waste. And a typical garment factory has about 80% waste in the tasks, right? Now, if you take the IT industry or software development industry, right? Anything that we do to, anything that we don't do to contribute to the end product in direct nature. Now, for example, say any developer who is sitting in front of a machine and writing code is the only value-adding activity. Writing requirement documents, writing design documents, testing, test plans, test cases, test automation scripts, all these are waste, right? It's a very bold statement by the way, right? But however, you can't take that waste out. The waste is there because that guys who are writing the code are making mistakes. And all these other stuff we are doing to assure that the error rate is low, right? So if somebody is trying to take that whole testing related activities and call it a waste and try to take out, then first of all we need to make sure that the guys who are sitting in front of the machine and writing the code, they are doing it the right first time, right? And then, you know, otherwise, you know, it's a very unproductive activity. Thank you so much. I really appreciate your time.